half of a peanut butter and banana sandwich, like nothing, and half of a roast beef type sandwich.
That's an interesting combo, bud.
It's just happened to be what was in the fridge. I know. It was kind of. Yeah. I was like, of all the things.
Roast beef. I'm thinking peanut butter, banana.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to eat. The whole point of it was I was just grabbing whatever I could bring protein, to the lab. And that
you brought it with you.
You have to eat it. Like I was like stuffing it in. You had to eat it fast, right?
Bringing you a reasoned approach to health and fitness. This is the Phi Life Podcast.
Welcome to the Phi Life Podcast. I'm John Barbin. With me is Brad Pilon. And today is a follow-up to an episode where I was reviewing the results of taking niacin and doing some testing on the side effects of niacin.
Right.
And we figured out that it might be affecting my blood glucose. I was wearing a blood glucose monitor, and one of its known side effects is potentially insulin resistance, and also stressing your liver. And at the time, this was a month or so ago, my liver enzymes were elevated, AST and ALT, which is expected on niacin. It's depending on how high the dose is, and are you susceptible to that side effect or not?
Right.
And all right, so to review, about a month ago, I did that testing, and it came back that I had elevated liver enzymes, and I got some funny readings on the glucose monitor.
Really messed up stuff, right?
Yeah, like blood glucose. My glucose, I've tested it before on a glucose monitor, and it's always super low. And like at night,
you're more hypoglycemic than you're hyper.
I go below 60 like often.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, and then so the monitor. If you drop below 70, the monitor has an alarm that goes off, but you can shut the below 70 alarm off. If you go below 60, you can't shut the alarm off. So it's viewing that as important enough that you don't even have the option to turn that alarm off.
Right.
So that thing's going off all night on me. So I just have to turn the phone off.
Is it like an audio alarm going off?
It's loud, and there's nothing you can do. There's no feature to turn it off. I mean, obviously it's not really meant for non-diabetics. So it's it's assuming you're going into some hypoglycemic crash.
Yeah.
Now I've asked my physician about it, and he says it's lots of people who he gets to use the monitor who are not diabetic. Lots of people drop below 60 and it's fine. So, and again, I'm 50 years old, and the first time I've ever tried a monitor was in the last 6 months. So it's not like all of a sudden I have some kind of blood sugar disorder and I'm going to go into a diabetic coma. Or a hypoglycemic coma. Like I'm not headed towards below 50, then 40, then out. I guess I just trend low. And after eating a mixed meal, my glucose doesn't actually even go that high. But anyway, so let's get into the testing. So I know that my baseline, when I'm just wearing the meter and I'm not doing anything, and I'm not on niacin, my baseline, I'm kind of low. My glucose is kind of low all the time. And even when I eat a mixed meal, meaning carbs, fats, and proteins.
Like an actual meal, not just...
Yeah, real food versus going in for the test where you just chug this gross 75 grams of glucose solution.
Yeah.
It trends the way a normal glucose would trend. I'd go up to 130, 140 after the meal and back down into below 100 within an hour or so. Kind of just what you expect. Just a normal.
You're low 70s, right? Kind of like your normal, like you dip in the 60s, but you're always like at 76.
Within a couple of hours, I'm back into the 70s, and at some point in the day, I dip into the 60s, and that's just kind of where I'm at most of the day. And if anyone's listening or who watching saw our last episode about this, I had a weird reading right in the middle of the day at 145. But I hadn't eaten, hadn't really done anything. So that doesn't make any sense. Why would it do that? But that entire week trend was kind of normal, except for that. I had this one moment, and that was kind of weird. And assuming that the niacin was having an effect, I thought, I should stop this stuff. And I actually reached out to my physician, my cardiologist, and he said, no, stay on it. Let's see if you normalize. Don't worry about one measurement.
Don't rush it. Yeah.
Right. So I cleared out, but within 2 or 3 days, I was okay, I'll go back on because I'm going to see him in a month anyways. And he wants to see more data. So I went back on it. I just went right back into the 2 grams per day dose. I didn't bother ramping up because I'd already.
So 2 grams of niacin.
2 grams of niacin. It's a lot.
So for everybody listening, so niacin is just a B vitamin. So this is just a supplement amount of B vitamin. Niacin, something you get in all of your B complex vitamins type thing. So it is interesting evidence that supplements work, and sometimes they work too well. In this case, the other thing I wanted to point out is when we're talking about these numbers, like John dropping down to a 74 on his blood glucose and jumping up to like a 150. We're literally talking about a difference in John's body of probably about a quarter teaspoon of sugar, table sugar in his blood versus a third of a teaspoon. Like it's that tightly regulated. So to give you an idea, while these fluctuations sound massive, it's a very tightly controlled little area of your physiology. So just these slight variations cause these sort of big changes. So niacin as just a B vitamin you can buy anywhere, causing actual big changes in blood glucose measurements, even though we're talking about just a small amount of sugar, it actually is a big difference.
So that's a good point. It's not a lot of actual glucose in the blood that can make a big difference. So we're talking about a very, very tiny amount. So I have my baseline, and it seemed like it was off with niacin the last time, and but the niacin was having a pretty substantial effect on my lipids, so we wanted to keep it going.
So it was improving your lipids, but we didn't like the effect on your liver enzymes and your blood glucose.
Right.
But the lipids were pretty profound, right? Like they really
it was profound for lipids, but blood glucose was off, but not off every day. There was one really weird day. And now that could also be just an error with the monitor, and I'll explain that in a minute, because I just did a glucose tolerance test, and we'll get into that. But again, it was working really well for the lipids, but it was also causing liver enzymes to go up. So I started Milk Thistle for the liver enzymes, and I just got that tested, and they're both back into normal range while on the 2 grams.
Really cool. So that's, again, just a bit more evidence that people generally like to talk of supplements as either, these miracles or just complete waste of money. Here's a great example of Milk Thistle doing exactly what it's traditionally been thought to do, which is help your liver. In combination with niacin, which is really helping with your blood lipids, but having a negative effect on your liver. So you're balancing out one supplement with another, right? So it's pretty cool. It adds a whole level of complexity to the world of supplements, because now you're taking a supplement to do one thing, and then a second supplement to balance out the first supplement, right? So
this is the do it yourself version of what doctors do. This is why doctors are reluctant to let you they're reluctant to be on board with you self-diagnosing, reading Google, and deciding, I need berberine, I need whatever, resveratrol, whatever it is that you think you're going to take, especially when you mega dose it. Again, when I'm talking about this stuff, I'm talking about mega dosing it, not
2 grams of niacin's a lot. Yeah,
it's a lot. When you take a lot of the mixed supplements to, I guess, to the benefit of not causing a huge side effect, the doses are usually a lot less dramatic in a mixed supplement where you have a complex of different ingredients. But when you go for a max hyper dose like this, you can get, like we've said before, you can get quite a big side effect. And so this can cause a side effect that needs another thing to fix that side effect. Plus whatever pharmaceutical you might be on. And then your physician's like, where do we even start? What's causing the issue? Especially if you don't work with your physician on I'm going to start this right now, and it's for the express purpose of this side effect or this main effect we're after.
Right.
So even though I'm just working with niacin and Milk Thistle, which are both over the counter, I can just take them myself. He's fully aware of the dose, and we're working together on how we're managing it. I see him next week to see what he says about it. So I think we've got this managed. So now the next step is the blood glucose. So I have a glucose monitor on right now. It might even go off during this because I keep dipping below 60 and I can't stop the thing from going off.
Right.
And so I go do an oral glucose tolerance test. Now and I have blood draws taken at time 0.
Okay, wait. You got to walk people through exactly what you did here. So you went somewhere, and
so I ordered a glucose tolerance test myself through ultralabs.com, and the people at the lab just know me now because I just do my own work, and then I just forward the results to my physician's to the website, the charting website. Anyway, so it's a 2.5 hour test, and you get your blood drawn 6 times. Times 0 is fasting, so you haven't eaten anything. Then right after you take the blood draw at times 0, you drink the 75 grams of glucose.
75
solution.
or 100 now?
This one's 75. You
75,
can do you can actually ask for 75 or 100.
Yeah.
And there's normalized, from what I can tell, there's normalized numbers you can compare your results to if you're on the 75 or the 100 dose. And then
cool.
so that's how you know, like, how far are you from the normal numbers on a 75 dose versus the 100 dose, from what I can tell. So we're doing 75 here. So you chug that right after your first blood draw.
And I was going to ask you, so do they give you a time? Like, you got to get this done in 2 minutes, 5 minutes?
Or 30 seconds.
Oh, wow.
It takes no time to drink it. It's small. It's just like a little bottled water, like smaller than a normal bottled water. So it takes no time to drink it.
Okay.
And then the next blood draw is time 30, then time 60. 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes, 120 minutes, 150 minutes. And then that's
just every half hour, right?
Yeah, every half hour, right? For five draws.
And are you, so just again, so for people understand, you walk into the lab, do you have to rest for a while, or can you just kind of come in and get going?
I mean, you might mess it up. You're not supposed to eat before that, and you're not supposed to have caffeine before that. Yeah. And I suppose if you went to the gym, you'd be screwing the whole thing up.
Yeah. So you don't want to jog to your meeting, right? Just like a normal standard meeting.
Like, I think if you want, from what I gather, and if it's going to be accurate with, again, this is all comparing to the data.
Yeah.
You can show up in all kinds of different states, and you're still going to get some kind of curve. But is that curve telling you anything if you're in a state that's not comparable to the data? So you don't do anything that day. You're supposed to not have caffeine 4 hours before, because then you get affected. So I just woke up. It was like a 9 o'clock thing. So I just didn't eat anything and didn't have any coffee. Then I just went in. So you go in fasted. So you're at a true baseline when you walk in there. Cool. That's the number you want.
Yeah.
Now, in this case, the blood draws are just for insulin. I'm using the glucose monitor to test glucose.
Okay.
I tried this before and they screwed it up. So I don't know if I clicked on the wrong lab. Anyways, so this isn't exactly how you would do it. You're supposed to be getting them to draw both for insulin and glucose.
Right.
But the last time I ordered this, whoever was at the lab couldn't figure out what I was ordering, and they got it all wrong. So it's just a complete waste of time. So This time I figure, let me just use the glucose monitor. I know it's not the same as intravenous, but it's at least going to be an approximate number, right?
Okay.
And so the blood draw was purely just to test insulin.
Right.
So got the results back just recently, and my insulin curve looks normal.
Okay,
so
that's good.
It spikes as you expect it to, but it doesn't go wildly high. It's kind of very normal looking curve.
Right.
And by time 150, I'm back at around 6, which was my fasting number. So I started at 6 and ended at 6. And which is my fasting number. So by 2.5 hours, I'm back down. And in between, it goes like, 40, 55, something, and then comes back down. So I don't think I got any higher than about 55.
Yeah.
Some people, like Peter Attia, is mega strict with what he would recommend. He doesn't want it to go above 40.
For insulin?
For insulin, yeah.
All right.
But again, his charts he sorted out for himself and his clients are like optimal as far as he's concerned.
Oh, okay. Not out yet. Okay.
But for a normalized chart, I'm totally in the normal range.
Right.
So none of my numbers are out of any acceptable medical normal range. But Peter Attia, I always reference him because he goes way stricter on his ranges.
Right.
So he's maybe he's got it sorted out what he thinks is turbo optimal for longevity versus stricter than what the average medical
optimal versus normal.
Optimal versus normal, right? So, anyways, so I'm just right in the normal range.
Yeah.
And glucose more or less looked normal. It went higher than I've ever seen it before. It went to 180 at 30.
180, okay.
But again, that's the top of normal.
Yeah.
So on a normalized range, 180 is anything above that they don't really like, but 180, at least for some charts, that's the top, and then it just and then they expect you back down to your fasting numbers by by the 2-hour mark. So, and
T120.
that's what happened. I went from 70 something to 180 to 140 to 130 back down to 70 something.
Did you dip below 70 or did you stick?
Well, I kept testing beyond 2.5 hours, and I was in the 60s by 3 hours.
By 3 hours, okay.
So that all. Oh, and then there's actually, you can find data on different styles of curves. So some people peak earlier, and some people peak a little later. So there's about 4 categories they've identified. So some people peak really early and then it comes down. Some people it ramps up and peaks like more towards the 2 hour and a half, 2 hour mark, and then comes down. Some people it's like a long peak and down. So I kind of had the normal looking right away and down.
Yeah.
So from that, I can't say that the niacin's having any negative effect on glucose. It seems like I just have a normal response. So my insulin is not exceptionally high. Its fasting is normal.
Yeah.
And it doesn't go out of range on the glucose test. The glucose itself is in normal range and it comes back down to normal right away. And then without drinking that awful glucose drink all day long, it's just normal. Now I did one other glucose tolerance test where I ate just a real mixed meal.
Right.
And the insulin it's half as high. So
blunted, but prolonged, right?
Not even prolonged, just half as high. No.
Okay.
So for 2 hours, I did the same test, used the glucose monitor for the glucose number, and then used the lab was drawing for insulin. Glucose doesn't go anywhere near as high, which you'd expect, I guess, with a mixed meal.
Yeah.
Compared to straight glucose. And then insulin only goes about half as high, or about 2/3, half, something like that, and comes back down even faster. So I think you would expect that with a mixed meal of carbs, mixed meal meaning real food, carbs, fats, and proteins.
Yeah.
So, and it wasn't anything fancy. It was a half of a peanut butter and banana sandwich, like nothing, and half of a roast beef type sandwich.
That's an interesting combo, bud.
It's just happened to be what was in the fridge. I know. It's kind of. I was like, of all the things.
Roast beef. I'm thinking peanut butter, banana.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to eat. The whole point of it was I was just grabbing whatever I could bring to the lab. And that so
I see you brought it with you.
You have to eat it. Like I was like stuffing it in. You had to eat it fast, right? Because you want to kind of mimic how quickly you can. Took me about 3 or 4 minutes to eat it. So, but anyways, so my glucose curve was much, much lower and my insulin was much lower, and it normalized faster. And that's how you're really going to be. Like, you're never going to actually just drink straight glucose ever. But I chose to do that at least to compare myself to the normal numbers.
Yeah.
And see, eating normal food, it's normal. But what about against the glucose standardized data on the oral glucose tolerance? So that looks normal too. So I think my cardiologist will assume we're all good here. So I've got the milk thistle. So moving on. So that I think the glucose is handled. Yeah. I don't think there's anything wrong there. I'm collecting 2 weeks worth of data, and so far about day 9 looks fine, looks normal.
Okay.
And then the milk thistles completely pushed the liver enzymes back into the normal range.
And how long have you been on the milk thistle for?
This is like 30 days.
And what brand?
Oh, I'll put it in the description.
Because the thing here is, supplements are awesome, but you got to make sure you get the right company and the right kind. So you've obviously found a milk thistle that is milk thistle, right?
This one's legit. Yeah, and you kind of get what you pay for it. Like, it's not cheap.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
So I'll put it in this. I think it's Life Extension. I'll put it in the description.
Cool.
So that seems to be working. Now that's only 30 days. We'll see what happens in 60 days or 90 days. But so far, I think we've managed the side effects. Now, I did a lipid test, and my lipids aren't as good as they were from a month ago.
Oh, interesting.
So something's changing there. Now, the main reason I was taking the niacin was to reduce Lp(a), which it did big time. Now, Lp(a) is still way down, not quite as far down.
And Lp(a) is a marker of. Why do you care about it?
It's a particular kind of LDL cholesterol that's an independent high risk for cardiovascular disease.
Yeah. So getting it down
Yeah.
is awesome, especially if you're doing it with niacin as opposed to something harsher.
There's nothing, and it's the one that's resistant to diet and exercise. You can't change it with anything else. The only thing you can change it with is either niacin or off-label drugs that they don't give to people who haven't had a heart attack yet.
So even weight loss, nothing, right?
Nothing. Weight loss doesn't change it at all.
Okay.
They only recommend to ever test Lp(a) once in your life, and you find out, are you normal or are you high?
No, wow.
But it's like, are you way off the chart and something has to be done about it? Or are you just normal and you just don't worry about it? And they know that about 1 in 10 people are like me, where I have it super high. And
1 in 10, eh?
Yeah. And we've talked about this on other podcasts. If it's high enough, these are the people who end up with a heart attack in their 20s.
Yeah.
But we're talking the normal range is 30 and below. And we're talking about people who are in the 500 and 600 range.
Yeah.
But those are people they're in big trouble. Like that's a high risk. I'm over 200, which is really, really high. But when you're in the 400 or 500 range, they actually do a therapy where you get hooked up to a machine and they takes all of your blood out and strips out all the cholesterol and puts your blood back. Kind of like a dialysis, but this is not. Yeah, I know. Cool. It's one of the only ways to deal with it, other than a particular drug, Repatha, but it doesn't work that well for people that are that high. So there's just nothing else to do with them, which super sucks. Now, my cardiologist is leading up some research on a new drug that might be able to. Is showing a lot of promise, and it might knock it down up to 90%. So those people finally have something they can take. But as of right now, there's no option. So,
okay, I have a quick tangent for you, because it's a question I'm going to ask you, then we'll ask everyone who's listening. Do you know your blood type?
A positive.
Okay, so we had to try to figure out our blood types, right? So my family's blood type, see if we give blood to somebody who needs it. So we called the family doctor. This is the people who took over my family doctor's practice from when I was born. No clue. But mine, Heather's, or either the kid's blood type is.
Your doctor doesn't know this?
No clue. So my question is for everyone who's listening or watching, is like, do you guys just offhand know your blood type? Or is this something that, like, is this unique to me, not knowing it? Or do most people not know what their blood type is? I'd be curious. So
unless you had a reason to test it.
Yeah.
Like maybe trying to donate blood, I don't think you'd know.
No, like I thought it'd be something maybe like on your health card or something, but no, it's not like a standard thing everybody knows.
Yeah, that's a good one. I don't think so. I don't know. I'm trying to think of why your doctor would purposely test that if you weren't trying to give blood.
Yeah. I just thought it was something like when you're born or something. Oh, I guess, or you're on the eat right, your blood type diet.
Yeah. Give or accept blood. Obviously, you have to know your blood type for either.
Yeah. All right, I've tangented. Let's get back to it. But
yeah. Oh, so anyways, I guess the story here is the niacin is working.
Yep.
It's not affecting glucose. I think I had I think it was just one weird measurement. Oh, and the reason why I think the monitor every now and then gives you a funny measurement, right in the middle of my glucose tolerance test, I was getting like very, very predictable numbers. I went from 70 or 80, then up to the 180, then it was like 150, 140, 130. But right in the middle of that curve, I had a 90. Because you can just tap it and test as many times as you want.
Didn't you wear 2 at one point?
No, I haven't done that test. I kind of want to do that.
Okay, we got to do that. That's going to be awesome.
But you can test as many times as you want. So I was testing every 15 minutes instead of every 30. So I was testing on the 30 to match it to the blood draws, but I was also testing in between. Just sitting there at the computer, killing time in the office. You can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
And I got one completely off the curve number. So I was going from 180 to 150, 90, back to 140. So there's no way that 90 is accurate. It's something to do with how the monitor was capturing its information. So that makes me think some of those funny numbers I got before, like the 140 in the middle of the day for no reason, might just be an odd measurement. I wonder how accurate that is versus if I would actually testing intravenous blood, like venous blood all day long. Could venous blood have a weird number? Because this is interstitial blood. Because the needle on a glucose monitor is not in a vein. It's just under your skin.
Yeah.
like in your fat layer. And that's a different perfusion of blood than the blood actually in your veins. It doesn't mean the blood itself is any different. It's just the rate that it can get through that tissue is a little different than the rate that it's going through your veins.
Yeah.
And my guess is once in a while you get some odd flow of blood. I haven't researched it all the way, but it's got to be why you just can get a completely out of whack number, and then 2 minutes later you're back to a different number. I just can't see how that would be happening in your veins.
I think we hook you up with 2 monitors and see what
and see what it's like in 2 different spots too. Yeah.
I'm not doing it, but you can do it.
Yeah. So anyways, so that's where we're at with the niacin. So I think we're good to go with the niacin. Now the next test is to see what's going on with the other lipids that changed while I was on the niacin. Now the first test I was leaner because I was coming out of a photo shoot. Oh, not a lot leaner, but I was, I don't know, 5 pounds lighter than this last test. But I'm still only in the 180s, which is a healthy, normal body fat range for me. And my body fat
low for you traditionally too, right?
Like my percentage rate in this last test, I can't be more than 10%.
Yeah.
And the test, body fat, and the test before that, I was 9. So do I need to be all the way to 9 for the niacin and the lipids to be that much better? It's kind of.
I would wonder. The other thing we talked about this on the phone earlier, is the way that the milk thistle's improving the liver enzymes, but perhaps it's interfering with the effect on the lipids.
Oh, I didn't even think to.
Yeah, I know.
I didn't even think to research it. Now I got to research that. All right. So I think that's a good place to leave it. So
I want to just point out, everyone, just again, what we're talking about is when in the world of supplements, right? We really are showing not only that some supplements are very effective, but they can also be, without using a huge industry term, synergistic or whatever, the antagonistic, right? Like they can compete with each other, they can improve each other. So it is an area when it comes down to supplement formulation, like you do have to know what you're doing, and you really are looking for the minimum effective dose. You don't want a super dose all the time because of issues like this. So you do want to make sure that whatever you're combining are meant to be combined, and make sure that your doses are on point, because it's as much as the mainstream media likes to talk about how, supplements don't do anything and they're just, rice powder in a bottle, as we've got examples with John's blood work, is it actually has significant effects sometimes, and you have to be careful those are the effects you want and not unwanted effects.
Yep. If it's gonna have a strong effect, it's gonna have a strong side effect. Simple way to think about it.
Yeah.
All right. So I think that's a good place to leave it.
Absolutely.
All right. So for Brad Pilon, I'm John Barbin, and that's your Phi Life Podcast.